Professor.
How did your life experience influence your training with clients?
I make connections with people. And I've always had a coaching style. You want people to connect to what works for them.
And we're live today on Imagine Fitting In with Aida Johnson-Rapp. That's right, correct?
Yes.
I met Aida, I'm going to say way back in the early 90s, mid 90s.
Like 1993.
93. And I believe did you come in as an instructor? Was that at the sporting club?
I came in kind of right away as a manager.
Okay.
And it's funny too, because I remember
and an instructor, weren't you?
I did teach, so I was an instructor as well. But I came in pretty much as a manager, and the reason why I say it's funny because you were speaking to Vinny Finnerman a couple of times ago, and Vinny was I was at East Bank Club, and Vinny was there. I was like one of the first 100 employees at East Bank Club. I was there, actually before
Shout out to Vinny.
Club opened, and doing training and stuff. And I worked on the floor as a floor trainer, and then became the second aerobic instructor at that club.
Wow.
But so I stayed at East Bank Club for a couple years, very part-time. And then I moved to New York. But at East Bank Club, there was Ray Balladad, there was a guy named Simon Meredith, who were both managers. And Vinny, I didn't interact with Vinny too much, but I knew who he was.
Yeah, Vinny mentioned Ray Balladad.
Yes, and right. And so after I left Chicago, during that period of time, so that was 1980 to 1982, I left Chicago because I danced. I was a dancer. So I wanted to go back to New York to see what kind of jobs I could get because I was getting older. I had been a cheerleader for the Bulls during that period of time. So, I thought that was kind of silly because I was a dancer. I was a real dancer, not a girl flipping her skirt and stuff. So I wanted to go back to New York. I mean, it was fun. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot of fun. But I still had that urge to go back to New York and see what other types of dance opportunities I could pursue. And I did a couple of things, but not a lot. And then the fitness era just came rolling in the 80s. And I went to this health club with a friend of mine. It was a health club in Brooklyn Heights. And I got a job there teaching, and then shortly thereafter became a manager. And but that was, again, the dance thing was still on my mind. I got married, got separated, and then I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because I wanted to be a dancer. Now I'm this aerobic instructor, which I really enjoyed.
Yes.
But I wanted to see what else there was out there. So I joined the military. So I joined the Army. Okay. And so when you met me,
yes.
So that was 1988 to 1993, the military. And when you met me, I had just gotten out of the military and started looking for fitness jobs because I did some fitness while I was in the military. I ran track and field, and
what branch
were you? I taught classes, as well as the other little military duties I had to do as part of my job. But then when I got out of active duty, I came back and immediately said, okay, well, this is what I do best. So let's go back to the fitness industry. Yeah. So I went back to East Bank Club. They hired me as an instructor again. And then I don't know how ACIC came across my desk, Athletic Club Illinois Center.
Yes.
But somehow it did. And Ray Balladad was the manager there. He was like a regional manager for Club Sports International. And there was another woman, Ann Beth Ansbach, who I knew from New York Sports and Racket Club. And she was part of Club Sports International. And so somehow or another, I connected with both of them. And then Steve Hozafo, who was the general, or actually the athletic director, about to be promoted to general manager, they introduced him to me and said, "You need to hire her." And Ray said that was great. So he hired me as a fitness director. And then I became the athletic director because I had done, while I was in the military, I had done some basketball refereeing for military basketball leagues and high school basketball leagues.
Nice. Can I
And
interrupt you here? Can I
the
interrupt you for a second?
basketball program at ACIC
Aida?
was out of control. And yes.
Let
And
me,
so they asked
I'm
me
gonna,
to, take that
right.
over. So
Okay.
that's how I met you.
Yeah, right. So that's around the early 90s. So I'm gonna back up because I definitely want to get back into that. Usually I'll start, and again, we're just kind of catching up. Usually I start like, tell us a little bit of where were you born? Where do you call home today? And what was your, what was your upbringing like, and your mom and dad? What did mom and dad do?
So I was born in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, one of those neighborhoods that, everybody talks about, one of those red line, roughneck neighborhoods. But um, I was fortunate that my parents were like, that's not who we are. We just want a house for our two children. I had an older brother. And so they ended up sending us to Catholic schools because they just were afraid of the public school system. And so I went to a Catholic school in our neighborhood and then went to a high school in Westchester, Illinois, bused there every day. And so that was my upbringing. My parents were from Georgia. In fact, this past weekend, I just came back from Georgia because my mom passed away in last November. She was
Oh,
almost
God
99
bless.
years old. So yay, long
Oh,
life.
God bless her.
Yes. And I wanted to bring her remains back to her hometown. She was cremated, so we had a little celebration of life this past weekend. But they moved to Chicago in the 50s looking for a better life, and for them and their children, because they grew up in rural Georgia. So you can even imagine what that's like for African Americans in the 50s. Well,
Sure.
actually, they grew up there 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I can't even imagine.
Wow.
And so they moved up north and they lived their life to make sure my brother and I had good educations and, they supported us 100%. So
Wonderful.
kind of a
Would
unicorn. I'm pretty sure that everybody was like, what are they doing? How come she doesn't go to public school? And I remember, my mom sent me to dance classes because she wanted me to be graceful. And so that's how movement
That's
came in my
great.
life.
Yeah,
So my
that's great.
first movement experience was tap dance at age 3. And my
Awesome.
brother went to tap dance, but his boys talked about him, so he dropped that. But I stayed with
Sure.
it. So, I did lots of different styles of dance.
Yeah.
Didn't
Now,
ever
what did your father do?
both my parents worked. My father worked for the federal government first as a postal worker, and then later he became a federal police officer, and basically to supervise and secure federal places like post offices, like federal buildings, like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
airports. So
Sure.
he moved around a little bit. We actually never did, but he moved around a little bit because of that. And my mom, she just, she had a basic kind of factory job. So she worked during the day, and my father worked mostly nights because they never wanted us to have babysitters. They wanted to be the ones guiding our lives. So they sacrificed a lot to make sure
Right.
that we had their supervision and a good education.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now,
they didn't
what?
go to college at all. They were just high school
Right.
graduates.
Okay. Now, what school did you attend? Starting elementary, high school.
I went to a little Catholic school on the west side of Chicago. It's called Our Lady of Lourdes. I went there from first to eighth grade, or kindergarten actually, to eighth grade. And then I went to a high school, all-girl Catholic high school in Westchester, Illinois. It was called Immaculate Heart of Mary High School. And I was part of the Catholic Archdiocese of Illinois' attempt to desegregate their schools.
There, okay. My late sister, God bless her, she here in Ohio. I remember when she was about a sophomore in high school. I think there was the busing, desegregation, and all that. And that was like, again, for us young minds, trying to put our heads around that, reasoning and whatever and how things are, right? When you're innocent, you're just like, okay, what's going on? Why is this happening? But we went to a Catholic elementary school called Immaculate Conception here in Dayton, Ohio. Now, when you were like in elementary school, I think the start really was elementary. Do you remember any teachers that were just like, whoa, they stand out in your memory that influenced you in any way?
No, not in elementary school.
Okay.
I was mostly
when was
nuns.
your first? Okay, yeah. Okay, say no more. Would you?
They were not nice.
Hey, listen, I still remember. I think I was just on the precipice of them pulling back the rulers or them pulling it out, but not actually using it. So what about? Okay, so
They
was
used
it in
it
high
on
school?
us.
Yeah. What about high school? Was there a teacher that stands out in your memory?
Yeah, there was a PE instructor. Her name was Rose Ruffalo, and she was a dancer herself. She had studied dance. She had spent a lot of time dancing. I don't know if she actually performed professionally, but she stood out because, literally being bused from Chicago to Westchester, Illinois, for the first 2 years, it was just me. So I was in a classroom by myself, and
Goodness.
there was no real effort to help me uh, really get into the environment of going from an inner city to a suburban school. But I'm a survivor, so I was fine, basically, more or less. I got through it. But
Yes.
by my junior year, it's time to really, I'm fired up. I've got a friend who also pursued dance. We were both kind of unicorns because she had been adopted and she had this kind of multiracial look about her, but she didn't know. Her parents didn't know. So, but she danced and two of us bonded. And then we met this PE instructor, Rose Ruffalo, and she was excited because there were two young women who were like seriously dancing. Like we took dance classes every week, and we would go downtown Chicago to the modern dance studios and the ballet schools,
nice.
and so we hated PE because it was bowling and it was basketball. And I mean, I don't dislike basketball. Trust me, I like basketball, but that's not what I wanted to do.
Right.
So she decided that in our senior year, she let us take this independent study option instead of PE, where we got to teach other students. And so Roseanne, my friend, she got a class to teach, and I got a class to teach. So I had probably 12 other high school students. They were in classes below me, so freshmen and sophomores. And
they put you to work.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first teaching experience.
That's cool.
And I taught a class called the class Body Control. And I used stuff that I knew from my modern dance classes. So I just took modern dance stuff and made it accessible for other students. And so that was my first teaching experience. I was 17 years old.
Nice. And so how do you feel that just kind of did that cement your direction there? So after you graduated, where was your headspace, and were you looking to go to college, or you already had plans on how you go the next step?
Yeah, no, my plan was to go to college. I liked all the artistic performing art things. So I went to Rockford College in Rockford, Illinois, my freshman year, majored in dance, but it was pretty miserable. It was a teeny tiny college
Okay.
and like a handful of dance majors. Beautiful college. It was a beautiful school. They had some famous actors and artists who were aligned with the school. So the theater was incredible. It had like this hydraulic stage that would go up and down. We had a beautiful dance
Oh,
studio. So, I mean, the facilities were great, but it, there was only one person who taught any significant dance, and she was much older and very immobile. You know, she was like the dance teacher with the doo 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 doo, you know, but it was pleasant. I mean, I can't say I hated the experience, but
sure.
it wasn't going to make me into or give me the dance performance experience I wanted. But I did
Hmm.
everything I could. I was in the dance program. I created dances. I was also in theater programs, so I did some theater tech, and what else? I was in. They had a production of Romeo and Juliet, so I was like kind of in the background in that. So we had these beautiful costumes that they made. I was
You
in
said
the
it sounds like.
traveling choir. It was called the
Uh-huh.
Rockford College Regent Singers. We actually sang at Nixon's inaugural in 1973.
Oh
So,
my gosh. It sounds like your experience there, as you described your older dance teacher. It sounded like they had an extensive art program, but then when going in there, it sounds like, did you have a lot of kind of freedom to bounce around and kind of develop a little bit on your own? But like in terms of
yeah,
there
I
wasn't
mean,
this, yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I would have done anyway. That's just the person that I am. It's like, okay, what's next? Okay, what now? Okay, what can I do next? You know, so I mean, and
you
nobody's,
might have actually considered that being lucky, right? To get fall into kind of like that where you have a little bit more range of motion, so to speak, in terms of spreading your wings, creative wings.
yeah, oh no, it was great. No, it was
Nice.
fun. It's just like I said, it just wasn't going to give me the performance experience that I was looking
Hmm.
for.
So,
It
so
was
did you?
more like dance education as opposed to dance performance, and I wanted to
Right.
perform.
And did you end up staying there and graduating that school?
Mm-mm. No, I left after my freshman year, moved back to Chicago, back with my parents, but it was like, well, you got to get a job or go back to school. So I decided to go to Roosevelt University and just to so I could live rent free. But but I also
Appease your parents.
yes, but I also took lots and lots of dance classes because there was a lot of dance studios, a lot of dance schools in Chicago, especially downtown
Hmm.
Chicago. So Roosevelt University campus was right downtown. I would go to class and I'd run and go to dance class somewhere. So yeah, so that worked out. But then
That
again,
was
that was like, oh no, this isn't going to work. So
was that
I
was
stayed at
that pretty
Roosevelt for a
much?
year.
Yeah, was
Huh?
that so? That's pretty much in the all those area that we're talking about in the Loop area. My sister actually went to Roosevelt, and I think she finished off her degree there. So I'm familiar with that college. And so, did you graduate from there, or what was your experience? What was your experience like there? And did you have anybody that helped you or steered you, or what was their program
At
like?
Roosevelt? No.
No.
Roosevelt, I was just taking classes. I had friends, I met people, but I did not really interact with any, professors. In fact, I got
Hmm.
incompletes in some classes because I was so busy going to dance class. So, no, I did not. But at the dance classes, though, that was great. I mean, I met quite a few people. In fact, I was able to get like free classes because I was so enthusiastic. So there was a woman
Sure.
there. She's since passed, but there was a school called the Chicago Moving Company, and the lead, the director's name was Nana Scheinflug. So she said, "You want to take classes? Fine, you can take classes here." And I didn't really have to pay for them. I just, sweat the studio up every now and then, but I could take all the
Okay.
classes I wanted. And
Nice.
so I stayed there. So that was probably like 1973, 74. But then because of that studio, I started meeting people who were dancing in New York and dancing in different places. And I met this gentleman named Joseph Holmes and another gentleman who I can't remember his name, but they had ties to the Alvin Ailey American Dance School. And I had told them, I said, I want to go to New York. I said, I'm not getting the dance experience that I want here in Chicago. I want to go
Yes.
to New York. I need to go to New York. I need to go to New York. And so they arranged for me to meet some people. And I moved to New York in August of 74. And I got a scholarship at the Ailey School. And I was there for about a year and a few months.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like, and I have to mention Vinny Finneran again because he literally hired me. I was a guy that was bored and not happy in advertising as a creative. My essence, I'm an artist. My passion is fitness. And it sounds like to me, he literally hired me for my enthusiasm alone.
Was that
And
Steve?
that was Vinny.
Oh, Vinny.
Vinny
Okay.
Finneran at the sporting club.
Oh, he was there. Okay.
Yeah. So he was the fitness director there. And, but no, for me, when I'm hearing you say that, like, this just gives an example of, right, when we really are in tune with our passions and you sound like you're headstrong, sort of like me, you're just like, okay, I'm doing this. This is, and it's a wonderful thing to have that and know it and like kind of just, you're holding on to something you own. It's special to you, and just that energy vibe is just radiating to people that see you and create opportunities, which is a wonderful message for listeners, anybody that's changing careers, young people. It's super important because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but we can doubt our confidence, we can doubt our ability to do what we're passionate about and kind of compete, so to speak. But it sounds really wonderful. So, did you have any, Aida? Did you have any significant life-changing experiences that affected you? I mean, you are, you want to be a dancer, you get to New York. How did New York scene treat you, and what kind of people, what kind of experiences do you have in New York?
So New York was very energizing. In fact, years after I left New York, I would always say I need to go back to New York to get my New York fix because it's very, in the arts, it's very energizing. And then
Yeah,
even in fitness environment, it was just, people were, especially in the 80s, it was just off the chain. But
blowing up.
in terms of dancing, especially in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me, or anybody else unless you found those niche companies. And then there were still only so many places there. But you fed off the energy, you fed off the creativity, you fed off other people's passions. I remember this one instructor teacher at Alvin Ailey. His name was Milton Myers, and he eventually did dance with the company, but he just would teach these classes with this enthusiasm, this energy, and these vocalizations, and just he would, you would be moving across the room in some combination, and he would be just shouting, "Yes, yes," all this stuff, and so that's actually when I think about how I teach, I always think about this guy And because he would
How it
just, he just
supercharged the
was,
room, right?
yeah, he just took the room. He just was in charge. Never, ever made anybody feel like, oh, child, you're just not going to make it. Because there were people who did that, but
Mm-hmm.
because he was a little tiny man with little short legs. So he had to work hard. Do you know that Napoleon syndrome? I'm sure he had it, but he wasn't mean. He was very, I'm a
Okay.
happy Napoleon, so, watching
Okay.
someone like that rise above what life had given him, but he wanted to dance, he was inspiring, and everybody loved him. And there was
That's
another
great.
instructor who's since passed. I think Milton's still around in New York somewhere, but his name was Frank Hatchett. And oh my gosh, that man he was a big, gigantic man. And he would have these classes that were packed, packed, no air conditioned, nothing. And he again just got you going. And I remember there were a lot of people that took his class who are like celebrities now. And I was like, oh, I remember taking class with that person at Frank's and that person at Frank's. So
Yes. Uh-huh.
so yeah, New York was very exciting in terms of just the energy. Now,
Right.
did I
You said
get a
acting.
lot of opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
A few, but not that many. I mean, like I remember going to a chorus line audition, and when you walked in to sign up, like, well, I don't know what you're here for. There's no black people in this. There's one black man
Oh
in this.
goodness.
Yeah, no, I mean it was 1974, 75, so it's a different
Right.
time. I mean,
That's back in the
that wouldn't even
day.
be a conversation right now, but then it was.
Right. Well, back in the day, um, to you kids out there, the older people will know this. More mature people, I should say. Um, you know, you had to act and potentially sing, and if you could dance, that's even a plus because of New York, of the theater, and right, your opportunity. And I had a friend who sang, danced, and acted, and all of it. So that's very exciting. It sounds like that very experience, like obviously resonated with you then. It still resonates, and you feel that vibe in your world today, and obviously teaching your classes. Because I believe I remember seeing you teach, and I was like, that girl can hold a room, and I was just a newbie. I was new to the industry. I'd been working on myself for like 10 years. I was just making the transition into fitness because I was very tired, and I realized that computers were coming in by that time, and this was in the early 90s. And I just realized that I didn't want to use my creative energies as an artist to sell things I didn't believe in. So it was a little like I'm 28, I'm turning around and wanting to do something more and different. So that's how I got started. And through a friend, Vinny hired me because of my enthusiasm. So when you are in New York now, um, did you at the time some of those instructors? Did you kind of consider them a mentor, or obviously there are people who influenced you? What? How'd your road? Where did the road take you? Your path go from there?
Um, what happened was, I don't know if I said I'm going to talk to them to ask them how they teach like that. I know I never did. But what happened was, again, here's my parents again, heavily influential in my life. I had promised them after a year or so, I would go back to school. So, because
Yeah,
education,
right.
them finishing my education, that was really important to them. And it was important to me too. And
Mm-hmm.
so after about a year, a little over a year, I said, okay, New York is hard. Now telling you about the excitement, but it was hard too. I mean, it was expensive, and
Yes,
I was a young person. I was in my 20s. I didn't have a lot of money, so
that's a scary.
it was a
Yeah, it's a
hustle,
scary place.
and it wasn't so scary. I mean, people think New York, it never was scary to me. I'd be on the subway at 2 a.m. in the morning by myself.
Really?
So I was never I never had that fear of New York, but it was just hard living. I mean, you had to, you had to hustle. And then
Right.
since I wasn't getting any shows or anything like that, I said, okay, well, maybe it is time to go back to school. So I left New York for the first time. So I've been back and forth. I left New York for the first time in January 76, and I moved to Miami. And literally, probably in November of 75, I said, okay, maybe I should go back to school. My father's job had transferred him to Miami to work the airport or whatever in Miami. And so my mom was going to go as well. So she was moving with him as well. So I said, oh, my parents are moving to Miami. Ooh, it's warm there. Ooh, are there any schools there? I'm going to go to school in Miami. So literally in November, I applied to go to the University of Miami. And January, literally December 31st, 10:30 at night, I'm on a plane going to Miami.
Wow.
So I landed in
how old?
Miami
How
on
old were you
January
at that
1st,
time?
1976. Huh?
How old were you?
22.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Another adventure.
So yeah,
And how long were you in Miami?
so Miami, so New York, Miami, Chicago. New York, Miami, Chicago. Chicago, New York, Miami, New York, Chicago, Miami. So back and forth a lot. Um, but that time I was in Miami for almost 3 years. But I would go to New York in the summertime, or I would, ditch out for a couple months. But I went to University of Miami. That was kind of fun. Actually, that was the first health club I ever worked in, was in Miami.
Do you
A
remember the
friend of
name of
mine
it by
was,
chance?
huh? Do I
Do you
remember the
remember the
name?
name of it
Yeah,
by
it was
chance? I'm just
Bodyworks
curious.
Fitness Center. I will never forget that. It was Bodyworks Fitness Center. It was on the corner of Sunset Drive and US 1. Never will forget that. Because it was cool. It was like a unique experience. I had the time of my life. I started teaching a lot there. And what happened was I went there, theater major, then I changed to broadcasting, then I changed to film, then to broadcasting, but theater major to start. And I started meeting dancing people. I started meeting artists there. So I met a dancer who was I don't know what he was doing down there, but he was a dancer and he was down there and he taught classes at this health club. Like in the middle of the weight room, there was like an open space.
Okay.
And he taught a jazz class there. And I met him. He invited me to come to the health club. I took his class and then we went to the steam, the hot tub, and the pool. And I'm like,
Oh.
oh, you can use this? I said, "Can I get a job here?" Just so I could use the hot
There you
tub and the
go.
pool and all of that. And he
Just get the
introduced me to the
spa, right?
owner. Huh? And
Just to
they
get the
hired me right
spa.
away.
Nice, nice.
And I
Now,
taught.
now,
Go ahead.
so how have your life experience, now that you're, I see in the show notes that you are now doing yoga, Pilates, and the sound bath meditation. You have to tell us more about that. But so your life experience, how did your life experience influence your training with clients? Like even back in the fitness time, and how has that transition to today? Like, your style, so to speak. What do you feel that's important for?
People tell me that I'm very calm, even though I'm super energetic. I make connections with people in classes. I don't know, could I tell you how I do it? I could say, you make eye contact. You try to watch each individual. You try to work the room. You work around the room. I was never one of those instructors who stood at the front of the room and
Right.
didn't get into walking around. I've always had a coaching style. Just because early on I realized that it was so unnecessary to do everything in a class because you want people to connect to what works for them physically,
Right.
emotionally, whatever. And I remember I took a ballet class in New York in those early times. And it was up in Harlem. I took a dance class at Dance Theater Harlem, a ballet class, on a regular basis. Someone had paid for me to take some classes there. A lot of people said, "No, you want to take class here." So the woman that taught the intermediate ballet class, she was in a wheelchair. She had polio.
Goodness.
She had danced with New York City Ballet, but she had polio. But she could get you to move. She would just say, da da. She'd throw her hands up and she'd do her upper body. And, she had all these expressions. And, at an intermediate level, we kind of knew what to do. But at the same time, she would help your technique. If your legs were out of alignment, she would just go by and do a little tap, and tell you da 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 da, And I tell people all the time, when I think about the Olympians who were trained by, the female Olympians who were trained by male coaches. And I think of that one guy, Bella, whatever his name was, and he trained Nadia Comaneci and all of these gold medal winning Russian gymnasts. He couldn't do uneven parallel bars. He was a guy. He wasn't short, he was like medium height. So he couldn't do a vault, but he knew how to tell them how to do it. And so that is kind of how I have always taught. I have never said that I'm going to be in the front of the room for the whole class, because people need to connect to it. If I can explain it well, and that's what I learned from that particular instructor that I had who was in a wheelchair. If you can articulate what you need people to do and, let them know it's okay if you don't get it right the first time, or I'm here to support you in your physical exploration, then they'll get it. And then you'll have fun. They'll have fun. I remember when I taught in New York, so I went back to New York in the 80s, 1980. Well, let's say 1983. And I taught massive classes. I mean, huge classes. But I would literally, it was even before microphone.
Be running everywhere.
We had a little platform high up on top. I would jump off that platform, literally leap off that platform, run to the back of the room and start moving with somebody and run back up, leap back up on stage, get everybody going. I wouldn't miss a beat.
Just about like an entertainer like Michael Jackson or Prince. Jumping all around it, right?
Somebody did write up an article about a class I taught in Allure magazine when I was at ACIC, and I was teaching a hip hop class, or we called it cardio funk or whatever. And this woman described me as the Janet Jackson of cardio aerobics, or whatever she described it. I still have that article somewhere.
The enthusiasm and the expression of energy, the vibe, people feel it. And I'm with you with that, class. I could never teach a class and stay up in there, because I would just be one to roam, and I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to confirm that what they were doing right, and to fine tune. And if they just did that, if they just had that class, right, and they had one movement that had been maybe coming multiple times with some other instructor, and they've never knew how to exactly correct it to take it to the next level. If you gave them that little extra bit of attention, they felt like, wow, okay, I was here. I took a class with him. I really had experience with him, even though it was a small bit comparatively. So now I know you've taught, classes for a long time fitness. And then, so what is your approach? And there's two questions here. Your approach when starting with new clients, and how is that transition taking place when you've gone now into yoga, Pilates, and sound bath meditation? That's all. Those three are really interesting.
Well, I started teaching Pilates back in probably late 90s, mat Pilates. And then in early 2000s, I was back in Chicago, and I wanted to do the full apparatus because I'd done it before, and made your body feel good. And I was getting older. I mean, like late 40s at this point. And I'm like, okay, I still love teaching and I always want to teach, but I'm not going to teach cardio hip hop at age 60. Just, number one,
I hear you.
I just don't like the music. I mean, I like the beats, but sometimes you go like, what did they just say?
Oh, right. I mean, say no more. Right.
So
why are they wasting their breath? And, that's got nothing to do with dancing. I don't know. It's a cultural progression, but go ahead.
Well, and then also it's just hard on the body. I mean, I got knee stuff going on, but I'm still, moving. But
Sure.
So I just said, how am I going to still continue to teach and take care of my own physical body? And so Pilates was definitely a lifesaver. So I did the whole certification, STOT certification training in Chicago. Then I got a job offer from Equinox to be a group fitness manager for them in Florida. And so I didn't get an opportunity to finish their test out program. But once I got to Miami, Coral Gables with Equinox, they want me to run the Pilates studio as well as a group fitness program. So I kind of built out a studio there, but then I didn't like Equinox. So this Equinox
yes.
1.0. It's 1.0. I went back. Equinox 1.0.
Okay. Say no more.
So then I moved to another part of Florida and just did some club management for like a whole social fitness community manager kind of program. So I did.
There you go.
I did parties. I did fitness. And I had a staff.
More kind of like down to earth, societal kind of, family oriented as opposed to just the corporate hard structure of like, get these bodies in.
And Miami had changed a lot from the 70s to the early 2000s. I was like, oh my God, what is this place? And I just was not ready for it and wasn't ready for the corporateness of Equinox. So I just quickly found another job in a more laid back part of Florida, Tampa Bay to be exact. And but it was funny because Equinox kept calling me. Like they kept calling me every 3 months. I'm like every 3 to 6 months. They go like, "You still in Florida?
You're too good, girl.
Are you still in Florida?" And finally, it was getting to be 2008, and that whole bubble of housing happened.
Oh yeah, the recession. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was at a community that was being hit hard by that. And even though that organization I was working for was called WTS International, even though they were still going to manage it, it was just difficult. People were just, they were in a state and it was just kind of a crazy environment to be in. So the last time Equinox called me and said, okay, so you're going to pay me more and give me more opportunities. And so all of that did happen. And so I went back to Miami and managed literally 3 clubs at one point. So I did Coral Gables, South Beach, and Aventura, because those were the clubs they had during that period of time. I liked Equinox. I mean, don't get me wrong, but then what happened at Equinox was that they offered a certification program in full apparatus Pilates, and since I hadn't tested out a stock, I was able to finish my full apparatus certification, and they paid for it. So I'm like, yay, Equinox, yeah, Equinox.
Sweet.
So I've kept that current.
So Aida, what do you like to do outside of work? I know you did, and congratulations. We haven't spoken. We kind of reconnect on Facebook, and congratulations, your husband, Rapp. Your last name is Rapp?
Yeah.
Okay, so congratulations on that. I haven't, haven't seen you forever. So what do you guys like to do outside of work?
So we just came back from Spain, so we like to travel. So we went to Spain for literally 3 weeks, and we're celebrating. Both of us are literally just turned 70.
What? Hold hold on a minute. You're 70?
Yep.
I'm 61. I thought everybody, wait, stops or something. Wait, you look fantastic, dear. Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I had a mom who was almost 99, and up until she broke her hip in January 22, so that's always a
Goodness.
decline. But she was
Sure.
active, and she wasn't, she didn't do a lot of organized exercise, but she loved to work out, and sometimes she would join a class or join a health club. My dad was 93 when he passed, so considering where they grew up and where they ended
Yes.
up living, I've got some good genes, and I have a couple of aunts on my father's side. I don't even know why they're in their 90s because they have definitely lived some hard lives. But
Oh, wow.
so I think
It's
I
like,
said
was
I
it
really
tough
got to
and tough
mess
and tough?
something up.
So,
But
have you ever worked with a client who had some really unique challenges that were, really affected you in a way that was obviously supportive? I know over the years, I've been in the business now for 32 years, and I've got a few. Is there any one that really stands out in your career that had unique challenges and made some successful?
well, I got this one client that actually I still have. I mean, I don't do a lot of one-on-ones. I like groups a lot, but even in the Pilates, I do small group training, like 12 people. I work for an organization called Club Pilates and Yoga 6. So I still much prefer groups over like one-on-one because if somebody's in a bad mood and you're there, you're stuck with them, that's it, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's when this whole enthusiasm goes to like, stop your
Taxing.
foot, but you don't do
Yeah.
that. But in the back of your head, you're like, why is this person
Right.
paying me? But I do have one-on-one client that I see virtually. He's still in Chicago, and he had some issues, I think, originally, but then some tick-borne illness happened and just changed his whole. People don't understand. I didn't even know how bad tick bites could be. They can
Oh,
affect your
right.
whole neurological system, and it took people a long time to figure out what was the issue. It took like 2, 3
Right. The
years before
gear
they
ticks.
found
Yeah.
out he had this tick-borne illness.
Mm.
And it kind of just took him out of a whole social life, whole high school life. But
Wow.
then as he started to get better, his somebody must have told him that he would benefit from meditation. So I was at East Bank Club. Still, I was the group fitness manager there for a little like 7 years. And I started introducing, so I did a meditation certification out of Bethesda, Maryland. I actually traveled there a few times, and then they had an online program. So it was like almost a year of meditation certification training, 160 hours. And I then told the management at the time, I said, well, let me start adding meditation classes. Because, I mean, they didn't have to pay me. So it was like they were already paying me a salary. So I just wanted to
Yes.
do meditation.
Sure.
So I started teaching meditation. Then I said, let's offer private yoga. So I didn't offer private yoga. I didn't do it personally, but I had instructors who, would do one-on-one. And then I said, let's add meditation to that because
Nice.
people may want to do just a quiet, silent meditation with a guided instructor. So I did those.
Yeah.
And this young teenager's mom reached out to me and said, I want my son, he has this neurological issue, to do one-on-one meditation. So I said, sure. So I started, and then pandemic hit. East Bank Club reduced its staff like crazy. I stayed on there part-time, but any one-on-one stuff was not going to happen just because of the virus.
Right.
Um, so I started working with him via Zoom back in so I think I started working with this young man back in 2019, and I still see him 4 to 5 times a month virtually,
No.
and he's in Chicago, I'm here in California, so
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Just a
and
long
it,
time
so
relationship, and
he eventually went to school. He finished his undergrad, just recently graduated a year ago, but we still, we're still in touch. So the
nice.
meditation has helped him. I mean, I remember at first, the first couple times we met, I would say, try to close your eyes, try to lay down. He couldn't do any of it. And he
Mm.
still doesn't close his eyes, but he requests the meditation sessions. Like he wants to do, like at first we used to do 30 minutes and he was like, can we go longer? So yeah, that's a profound change.
Yeah, it's interesting because um, when obviously Jane Fonda, like you said, in the early '80s, blew up the step classes, and then it's funny, by the time the early '90s came around and I'm getting into fitness, I remember all the people that were working at the club that were young people going to school, and there was just lines and lines of people trying to get in get take on a list or get accepted to physical therapy school. It seemed like uh, Jane Fitness and the boom of all those step classes blew up the physical therapy industry from the knees and hips or whatever, and people all of a sudden getting really crazy and active. Um, but I find it interesting, getting back to the yoga side of it in your meditation, that we saw a real kind of like that yoga, like sliding in the fitness world and becoming more and more critical as a modality for wellness, right? When we start talking more about just wellness, not just fitness, and that mental health. And obviously we come to a point these days where mental health, we have a number of circumstances between technology and natural progression of stress in our lives. And obviously COVID threw a big old wrench and kind of, exacerbated even more. So, what are your thoughts on the fitness industry in terms of like where, I don't know, we know where it was transitioned. What are your thoughts on the fitness industry in general? I mean, what's your take on the fitness industry?
I've been reflecting on this because I'm working now for some people. I'm kind of working a little bit for myself. Like my private meditation is my little company that I am still trying to figure out what that is. But I work
Okay.
for a franchisee of Exponential Fitness, which is this huge corporate company that owns all these brands.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my career, I've worked at big box clubs, East Bank Club, Equinox, Club Sports
Right.
International. But on occasion, I've worked at smaller studios, but that's not been where I've spent most of my fitness teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so this time around, I'm in a boutique. And I remember I'm in two boutiques, the same owners, Club Pilates and Yoga 6. And I remember when I was at East Bank Club in these past recent years as manager, we would always talk about, we don't understand why people would go to a boutique and spend 200 and something dollars a month to go to a boutique, and they could come here and get 200 classes a week anytime they want to come. And, the facility is open like 18 hours a day, and we've got all of this
Right.
stuff. We got showers. These boutiques don't even have showers. But now that I'm in a boutique environment, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes a community. There
Exactly.
there is this
Family type feel.
there is, yeah, people meet each other,
Intimacy.
people chit
Yeah,
chat, people
exactly.
become
Yes.
friends.
Oh, yeah,
They don't
absolutely.
feel so intimidated. If they're short on time, it's not like a whole process to get to the class. They just, you check in at the front, you put your shoes down or put your bag in some little cubby and go into the class, and then come out, get your stuff, go back out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can create a community, or you could just run in and run out. And I
Right.
had started going to some boutiques when I was in Chicago, like just so I could get away from the club. So I would go to Core Power Yoga sometimes before I left Chicago in 2022. to move here, I had joined this really small, more intimate, um, but full service facility called
Right.
Beyond in Chicago. It was kind of stupid expensive, but it was nice because it was small. And I started enjoying that. And so I think that is where the fitness industry is going, actually kind of going back to that because there were small studios in the early
Yeah.
days of fitness. There were a bunch of small studios.
Right.
And
Now, what would you say? What would you round out like all your years' experience? Obviously, you have the dance experience, the general fitness, your yoga, Pilates. If what advice would you give someone that's interested in obviously arts and or slash that wellness, fitness, right, proactive, pro health, right, wellness world? What kind of advice would you give someone starting out?
you know, one of the things that makes people, I think, successful, because I've had to hire hundreds of instructors and hundreds of people. And one of the things that makes people successful, yes, you need the knowledge, you need to know what you're doing, but some of those people can be too brainy, too heady, and no, don't have the necessary touch points. And but if you really want to teach, and if you really have a passion for helping people fulfill or stay healthy or fulfill their, sports passion or whatever, I would say take some acting classes, take
Huh.
some creative classes. I still do stuff like that. So
Oh, that's awesome advice.
in 2016, me and my husband together did the entire Second City Improv program.
Oh,
We
fabulous.
we did improv from A to E. That's all the classes. And once you get to
Wow.
level C, you actually perform on stage. And
Wow.
then I did a performance workshop laboratory that they had for a couple of performances. And then we both took a storytelling class, and I took an additional storytelling class. And what it did is, what it just taught you how to communicate.
Right.
That's if you communication is key. I mean, when you look at the things that sprung up during or got real successful during COVID, Peloton, for example,
Right.
it was really this buzzword these days, cult of personality, but it was the people who were really pumped and hyped about what they were teaching. It was important that they had a
S-
personality.
Right. Strong enough to get through the wires and the lines to the screen to affect that person on the other
Yeah.
side. Yeah, for sure. You couldn't be a timid, not so great communicator, energy person on any kind of viral type class. That's for sure. Um, wow. So that's a really great idea, and very cool, very cool. So Aida, gosh, I just want to thank you for taking time out. The Imagine Fitting In podcast is all about stories of mentors, healthy lives, and community. And in these times we're in, I think it's even more important that not only young people can understand and realize the importance of mentors and to become a mentee, to obviously, hopefully they can find a avenue of passion. Sometimes a mentor in one field can steer them and have them introduced to somebody else that steers them elsewhere. And I believe strongly about this podcast that everybody's story from every part of every profession, there's a nugget that when someone hears this particular podcast, our discussion, that timing in their lives can be a real life changer. And I'm confident that there are plenty of nuggets to be spread. And that's why I've been reaching out to people from clients to fellow fitness professionals. And again, I thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
it's a real pleasure. I'd like to hope that I say I'm going to be getting out to California and be able to meet your other half.
Okay, yeah,
All right.
let me know. Because you were living in
Okay.
California for a while, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, for quite a bit. So I will. I'm familiar, and it's definitely a soft spot in my heart, California. So Aida, I want you to have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Um, God
You
bless
too.
your memory of your mother, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.
All right, kids. Till next time.
Professor